Hey women, I wanted to pop on here with a newsletter episode, just continuing this conversation about cancel culture and speaking clearly. I've been talking a lot about this on my Instagram and other content lately, and maybe you caught my live where I shared my personal experience or brushed with cancel culture and how my communication skills really, I feel like, moved me from a place of feeling fearful that I would be canceled for my views to actually just being in integrity. If you didn't catch the story, I was in my 5th round of interviews with my dream job, and I actually was turned down for this job, or we parted ways at that point because of my unwillingness to change my speech patterns to match the values of this particular organization. And I was really concerned because I was in a close-knit community. This was a high-profile job. A lot of people knew that I was, potentially going to get this job, and I was really worried about pushback within that community. But guess what? It didn't happen for me. And I think the reason that I actually was able to avoid a lot of this pushback is just the clarity of communication that I had. And if you want to hear more about that story, you can go check out my Instagram live on the topic. But I did want to add a few things that I didn't get to there. One, I wanted to talk about what cancel culture even is. And in my opinion, cancel culture is essentially when it is the complete devaluation of what someone both says and does based on something that they have previously said. And I think this is important because it's based on what people say, not what they do. And I think that is really boring because most of the time I'm far more interested in what people do than what they say. And if I'm just giving an example, I know a lot of people who maybe say things that are off color or not politically correct or, not necessarily the way I would communicate. But if their actions actually are demonstrating just sort of a high level of commitment to their values and, a high level of integrity, I'm far more apt to trust that person based on their actions rather than based on their speech. Something else I think that's really important here, though, is if we are fearful of getting canceled or even just wanting to, avoid and put our best foot forward and speak to the nuance that is intrinsic to our world, that really comes back down to our communication skills. Because the second aspect of cancel culture that I see is really this black and white thinking where people aren't existing within this gray area, right? So this idea that it is either this or that, and if you don't say this or that, then therefore everything else is null and void. And to be able to speak incisively to the nuance that is just true in our world takes some pretty clear communication skills, right? I will say also, if we're interested, therefore, in not being canceled, but actually communicating our message, whatever it is that's important to us, or whatever it is that we want to share, communicating that effectively, I think it's a pretty motivating culture that we're in to learn how to really hone that language because of the repercussions, I think, that are so culturally common with people, being canceled, so to speak, or really having repercussions from their speech patterns, right? So again, it's largely based on what you say more than what you do. And so what a motivating way to really get behind bolstering our communication skills so we can actually say exactly what we mean. Another point that I want to bring up here is the idea of linguistic relativity, which means that the world that we perceive is largely the world that we have language to discuss. Another way of saying that is everything that we consider and think about the world is filtered through the language that we have. So when we are limiting language or having compulsory speech or feel like we need to say a certain thing, we're actually very much contributing to the sort of simplified or diminished worldview that I think is honestly contributing to this really harsh cultural moment that we're in, right? So learning to speak in a way that is sort of non-policed and that is really open and in line with your values and clear is actually contributing to this culture that we want to be in rather than contributing to the problem that I think is part of what is creating cancel culture in the first place, right? If we all actually speak the same way, use the same language, say the same things because of the parameters that we're supposed to speak within, then that minimizes the diversity of thought and really the diversity of understanding of the world in which we live. And I think it's that lack of diversity of thought, that lack of diversity in language and speech that's directly contributing to this overall culture that says there's something that is ultimately correct or incorrect, right? So essentially, the language that we have colors everything about the way that we think about the world in which we live. And therefore, if we're really wanting to broaden and, shape this world as women, the way we speak about it, I would say, is our primary tool that we have. So I'm really excited to announce that we'll be continuing to dive into this topic, and that next week on Tuesday, March 7th, I will be doing a free masterclass called 3 Tips for Centering Women in Your Business. And I relate this to clear communication and cancel culture because maybe you are concerned that if you were to, share your values in your workplace, that you would lose your job, or maybe you're concerned or fearful to speak about female physiology in our current political climate, or maybe you really want to center women in your work, but you feel like the women around you don't actually share your values. If any of these sound like you, then this masterclass is absolutely for you. And we're, as you could give guessed, really get into the nuance of communication skills. And so you can leave with 3 really clear, actionable tips for how to make this shift, not just in your business, but in your life more broadly. Because I want to see all of us centering women, centering ourselves in our lives, and really up-leveling our communication so we can show up and be the women that are creating the culture that we want to see and want to live in, rather than feeling limited by the sort of compulsory speech culture in which we currently are residing. So if you are interested in this, you can sign up, and I would love to have you. Again, it is free. And also, we only have a few spots left for women's work. We are over halfway full. So if you are interested, please sign up, because the time is now. And we will also have a special offer for those of you who are interested in women's work that will be released in that masterclass. However, even if women's work is not for you, or you've already done it or whatever, this masterclass is free, and it's for the community at large, because the more of us that can do this work, the more we rise and do the work of female liberation, right? So just remember, cancel culture is based primarily on what you say and not what you do. So by speaking in integrity, speaking inarguably, and then acting in integrity, I think so many of us can just rise above and create the culture that we want to see as women. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope to see you next week, and we'll talk soon.